Good evening. I'm Devin Nowlin. I'm the Museum Project Director with Williams College. I'm very happy to welcome you here tonight to this Fall Community Forum about the new WCMA as we start construction. We've brought together many members of our project team to bring you details about the museum design and a construction update with a special focus on the new landscape design of the site. We'll first hear tonight from Pam Franks, the class of 1956 director of the Williams College Museum of Art, and then from Beka Sturges, principal with Hildebrand, who is overseeing the landscape planning. Stephen Andenmatten is a member of our project management team with Skanska, who will provide a schedule and communications update. And then we'll hear from Abby Berkebaul, who is the senior project manager with Consigli Construction on the project. And Abby was also the project manager with Consigli for the Davis Center project, and we're very happy to be working with her again. We've prepared a presentation tonight that we expect to last for 1 hour, and then we'll have a Q&A time for about 15 minutes. As we collected RSVPs for this event, we asked for advanced questions, and where we were able to include answers to those questions in the presentation, we could. But I expect to have more Q&A tonight after our presentation. And so that's the end of my introduction, and I'll pass the mic to Pam Franks.
Thanks, Devin. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for your interest in WCMA. I know there are a lot of things going on, so it's really fantastic of you to be here. I know my colleagues from the museum join me in being grateful for your interest in the museum project, and I want to really emphasize that we're all here to talk to members of the community. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to invite my colleagues to stand for a moment, and so you can all sort of look around and see who is here from WCMA, so you can perhaps say hello. So this is a huge team effort, and everybody from the museum has been involved along with everyone else who you'll be hearing from tonight. So please do introduce yourselves and get to know each other. So I'm going to show just a few images of the exterior building design to get the program started tonight. But I do want to invite you all to come to the museum in Lawrence Hall, where we have a full exhibition of the museum design, and it will be on view through December 22nd. So come this fall and dive in more depth. But I just wanted to show a few to get us started tonight. The other cool thing in the exhibition at the museum is there's a model, so it's really fun to see that. This is the view from the south. It is the view essentially from the Rotary. So the roof is clearly a defining feature of the building with an elegant profile that resonates with the mountain landscape and material that really harmonizes with the quality of light outdoors and contributes to an open, integrated feeling with the landscape. So, and as you can see from the image, the new museum will largely be on a single story with all the public, gallery, and classroom spaces on the same level as the entrance. And the idea is to create an expansive ground floor experience and ease of access and navigation. The other thing that I love to highlight at this early point in talking about the building is the location. It is at the entrance to campus and at the entrance to town, and it carries a really energizing message that Williams and Williamstown are a place of creativity and community. The welcoming and approachable design signals that the arts are for everyone and really an inclusive and kind of generative force in our town. This is a view from the southeast, so just a kind of 45-degree difference from where we were directly from the south. And I think it captures a sense of the appealing approach. The new museum is being built for greater access to students in the form of an expanded study center and expanded exhibition space, also as a hub for the community, as a welcoming, accessible, free, always free space for spending time with art, attending special programs, including what we expect to be an expanded K-12 program and family programming in our new facilities. And we haven't been able to do as much of that before, but we're excited about doing that going forward. And the addition of a cafe in particular, which we hope will become a real favorite destination and a place of community for all of us. This view from the west, especially in combination with the last two perspectives that I showed, shows how the roof profile and the building form really change as you move around the structure, and also with the time of day and season. So our aspiration from the start has been to create a building that is itself a work of art, as well as a home for art, and that adds significantly to the architectural distinction of this area. And one of the really special things in the focus for tonight is that the building architecture and the landscape architecture are conceived totally integral to each other. We're really leaning into the interdependence of museums and art and the natural world, and we're excited about the landscape being equally part of our educational and aesthetic program. So the values of environmental stewardship, educational potential, openness, lightness, seasonality, these have all been guiding principles for the landscape design from the very beginning. So with these aspirations, Reed Hildebrand has been the ideal landscape partner, and I'm really delighted that Beka Sturges is here to present the landscape design in progress tonight. Beka is a principal of Reed Hildebrand. She manages the firm's New Haven office. She leads both private and public projects, and I want to highlight especially a few examples of her museum work. She's currently working on landscapes for the Powder Art Foundation in Eden, Utah, the Smithsonian's Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden in Washington, D.C., and closer by, Storm King Art Center in New York's Hudson Valley. Closer yet, Beka has led the firm's work at the Clark for the last decade and has served as the project landscape architect and manager for its award-winning expansion. Reed Hildebrand has also worked with Williams College over many, many years on an overarching landscape assessment. Most important for the mission and vision of the new WCMA, I want to highlight something that I've found inspiring, and that is really how Beka's way of engaging with the landscape, her deep love of plants and ecology, really drives her practice and the way she advocates for new ways to reconcile conservation and programmatic goals. She's a committed educator, which also resonates with us very much, including as a senior critic at the Yale School of Architecture. So ecology and education are driving forces for the future of museums as a whole, and for WCMA in particular. And we feel that the landscape design that we're working on together with Beka will embody these passions that sort of fuel her vision. So we make a great team, and I'm really thrilled to welcome you here tonight, Beka.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, all of you, for coming out tonight. It's great to be here. I have had the surprise and delight to get to work in Williamstown for 20 years now, basically since the very start of my practice as a landscape architect. You are a community that is very important to me on a personal and a professional level. And so it is an honor to get to work on this project, which is a really important project, I think, for museums, for schools, for students, for all of us who love to be surprised, which is one of the things that art does better than almost anything else. And the thing that I've gotten to learn about Williams and its impact on the art world since I've had the chance to work here is that because you educate so many people who go into the world to work in museums and in education, your influence, what happens in this kind of small town, actually shapes how people experience art and think about it around the globe. So this is a kind of tiny project that is potentially quite influential, and it is an amazing, I think, opportunity for you, the community of Williamstown, to shape how we think about the intersection of ecology, nature, teaching, and daily lives. And so with that, I'd like to start by sort of saying that It's really important to us at Reed Hildebrand and the way that we've understood this project to really think about it in the scale of the Berkshire Hills and the landscape. And I did, as was mentioned, get to work on the Clark's project, and I see, Michael, you here in the audience. And one of the things that drove that project from the very beginning was trying to be really sensitive to the sense of scale and trying to do something that was both really had a sense of scale that was modest and large at the same time, and that responded to this specific landscape. And so I think we brought some of the lessons that we learned working on the Clark to the way we thought about this project here. And I would say, with that in mind, we have tried to sort of bring together those distant views of the hills, the forests that are loved around here, the kind of pastoral landscape and college landscape that many people are drawn to Williams for, and just sort of try to return some of the views that had been obscured over time with the way the inn had been developed. So thinking about that site context, one of the things that is unusual for Williams about the site that we're getting to work on is it's kind of at the edge of town, right? And so the fact that the forest is nearby is something we wanted to try and figure out a way to bring a little bit closer while bridging with Field Park and Greylock across the street. It's also an interesting site because even though you don't feel it there, the stream, the brook basically runs right by the edge on the west. And we were interested, and we've been interested in a while, in trying to make the streams and the waters that surround Williamstown really more central to how everybody gets to experience it. They're really beautiful. There's a lot of good habitat. The sound is really soothing. And they bring great health to our communities if they're respected and treated well. And so the fact that we're very close to wetlands and we're very close to the brook on this site, we thought was a wonderful asset. Starting in 2017, we were invited to help Williams think about the campus landscape. And one of the things that and it was an interesting project because it wasn't a master plan. It was very much a study. And so it was called the Landscape Study. And you can look at it online. It's available online. But one of the things that we came to sort of understand and seemed interesting to us about the Williams campus is that there's all this amazing nature at the edges, which we called the ecological edge. And then there's the campus core. But then there's this sort of almost lost zone, which hasn't seemed to have a really clear intention around it. And so we sort of brought that forward as being a really exciting potential for the future of the college in terms of thinking about designed ecologies and how you can teach an appreciation for nature and stewardship. And this is the first project that we've gotten to work on with a college that allows us to think about what that could mean. How can you design a site that serves all the needs for teaching and community coming together and also really seek to achieve the highest ecological promise? So this is a much more familiar looking kind of plan showing you what I think you all know, which is where the site is, but very much at the western edge of campus. And in a similar way that the building itself, just as Pam was saying, sort of responds to different conditions and reflects the activities that are happening inside, we did a study of the different east, west, north, south conditions and how we could reattach to our context, our neighbors. And we have established different environments that move around the building and that you experience when you're coming in from the west versus from the east. And I'll walk you through those now. When I think you start making a landscape, one of the first things you need to understand is what exists already. And so we did a pretty careful site inventory about the plants that were on the property when we started. But what was important to us was not just to stop there, but because we really see this as an extension of the campus, to walk the campus and to do an assessment of the plants that are flourishing on campus and the ones that there's been a lot of problems with. And for instance, a species that keeps coming forward as maybe being a great species to plant here is the native blueberry, but for reasons that we've come to understand, it tends to fail on every single project that it's been planted on the campus. So we did a lot of work both on the immediate campus site and in the larger campus to understand what's likely to really flourish on this location, in this location. And then there are great aspirations at the college to meet the best possible stewardship and sustainability standards. And so as part of that, this project is going after IFLI certification, or Living Building certification, which is a very ambitious standard to hold a project to. As part of that, when it comes to the landscape, we participated in a biophilia workshop, and as part of that, we had to set some criteria for what we were going to actually do with the landscape. And you can see part of what we needed to do was perform an objective scientific assessment of the existing ecological condition of the site, of the inn. And you can see how we scored at the beginning. And then we had to identify targets. Because of the past use of the site and because of the amount of invasives that were on the site and also contaminated soils, the existing site scored very, very low. We've set pretty ambitious targets for the different things like species composition and biodiversity going forward. And so the way that we're planning on achieving that, on the east, we're going to be introducing a native flowering meadow. This is what will greet people as they're coming from campus. It will also be the condition across from Field Park. We have just installed yesterday a test plot for a meadow sod that we might be using. So you can watch at the south corner of Main Street and the intersection of South Street. If you want to see, it's just newly established, but if you want to see some of the species that we're looking at bringing into the meadow here, they're there. And then this is basically another portrait of what Pam already showed you. But the idea is that this is meant to be multi-season with really a lot of species diversity. And then this is just a sample of some of those plants. It would be a lot of asters, a lot of coneflower, definitely a stable base of fescues and spirobolus, and then some shrubs and plants. We're also not being 100% native. We're using some well-adapted, sort of friendly naturalized species. So daffodils, for instance, not native to the United States, but really a wonderful part of campus life. We also are going to have a garden, and the garden will wrap the southern and western and northern edge of the museum, and it'll be what you cross to enter in. And it's meant to mostly be a woodland garden with some flowers. It will have a lot of seasonal interest, and it will be a little bit, it'll be fairly evergreen. One of the things in the interviews we did specifically with students was to identify that for many people, particularly people who didn't grow up in New England, the fact that there are no leaves on the trees and that the landscape gets so gray for much of the time that they're here is a little bit depressing. And so they really asked if we could include more evergreens. And so we've done that particularly in the immediate garden area. And then this is just a view of what it might be like to come through the front door. And it's a sneak preview of the courtyard that is inside. So again, the welcome garden is going to have more flowers as part of it and more color. So including things like anemones and then lots of asters, some dogwoods. The west garden is an extension of that. It has more shade, so it's going to be even more of a woodland garden. We'll have things like viburnum. Oops, that was a little fast, sorry. And then this is a view taken a little bit further back than the view that Pam shared with you. It is meant to be lush, but also welcoming, so we want it to be just open enough that everyone can see each other clearly and say hi and all of that. Trying to think, I think we will be having some bulbs, so crocuses and some hellebore, which is Lenten rose is another name, also not a native, but a plant that just does beautifully in Williamstown. And then I think a hope that we had for this project and something that we're really excited about is trying a new method of reforestation. When we did evaluate the existing slopes, particularly on the north and the west of the site, they were mostly Norway maple and a lot of dead ash. And so it became clear that most of the plants there were ones that we weren't going to be able to keep and meet our ecological targets, and so they needed to be removed. But we really are determined to have more plants, more biodiversity after this project is completed than there are, when we begin. And so we're going to be bringing 40 species of trees to this part of the project, and we're planting more than 1,000 trees. And so this is a view looking out from, sort of due north. And one of the things that you can see is that we're trying hard to add all those additional plants, but not obscure the views. And really making sure that there are moments where you really can see to the hills is a critical part of what we're trying to achieve. And so this is just a sampling of some of the species that we're planting. So we'll be introducing things like sourwood, which there aren't too many examples of here locally, fair number of hickories, lots of oaks, maples, more witch hazel, winterberry, which is one of the plants that's planted right outside here in the parking lot and is doing very well. And then these are just some examples of the existing conditions of the slopes there, and you can see the quality of the woodland. I think from far away it looks just fine, but when we got in there and looked at it closely, it's really a sick forest, and really mostly, as I said, full of invasives. So the goal is to build a thriving, adapted forest condition with many different species so that it's resilient, and species that grow at different rates. So some that will be really slow growing and take their time, and others that will really grow rapidly and provide cover and habitat really quickly. This is maybe a little bit technical for some of you, but we also thought maybe helpful. It's a section cut through that steep slope on the west, and shows what it will look like this summer when we've cleared for the regrading that's required to get the drive and the parking in. And then it shows where we'll be starting to replant. We will be having plants established, we hope, and growing pretty well by the summer of 2027. And then we thought we would show you just a snapshot 2 years later as those plants grow and the height and density really start to be established. Another big part, as I think you probably are all familiar with, living here in Williamstown, because there is so much ledge and so much clay underground, it's really important to manage stormwater carefully. And so we have worked hard with our civil engineers and others to shape the ground so that we're capturing as much of the water that falls on site as we possibly can, and infiltrating it wherever possible and using it for irrigation to water all these hundreds of plants that we're planting. And this is just a little diagram showing how that's going to work. But because the slopes are steep, because we're right next to the brook, we're really doing everything we can to manage the water quality and take care of all that rainwater and snowmelt. And so this is just a view looking from within the parking bays up toward that north slope of the museum. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is the courtyard. Very exciting and an important idea from almost the beginning of the project was the question of how can we make nature and a celebration of plants really central to what everybody understands art at Williams to be. And so in a very literal way, we're putting a little pocket of nature in the center of the museum itself. And this is another space that will have a certain degree of evergreen quality and a little mini hills and be a place for both the encounter with art, display of art, and a little bit of hanging out. So there'll be some seating in there. And then stepping back a little bit to what you'll see when you first cross the doors. This is a portrait of that garden. And then with that, I'm going to hand it off so that you can hear a little bit more about the actual pace of this project.
Hi, everyone. Before Stephen comes up and talks about the schedule, the Inn has alerted us that there are 2 cars parked in EV charging spaces and that they are potentially going to tow those cars. So please, if there happen to be your car in those spaces, move them. Thank you.
Hey everyone, Stephen Andeman with Skanska, the owner's project manager, working with the Planning, Design, and Construction Department at Williams, just overseeing the project. So, as Beka mentioned, just a quick overview of the project timeline. I'm sure you've noticed we've mobilized the site this week. We have some reforestation and early planting that Beka went through in the spring of 2025. Which is basically establishing trees, ground cover, shrubs, and the edge along the west and north of the site. In next summer, we're projected to have heavy timber superstructure arriving and getting erected on site. I guess, fast forwarding to the fall of 26 is when we expect to do final site improvements and landscaping. Finishes within the building will be complete in the winter of 26, and then commissioning, performance monitoring, pretty lengthy period for museums, closeout activities, and move-in, which brings us to the fall of 2027, which is when we're projecting the grand opening. You can see on the timeline where we are today with the community forum, and then we are, I believe it's the 24th of this month, we go in front of Conservation Commission. And that's to address the edge of the site on the northwest that falls within the 200 boundary from the brook. Just an overview on communications. So anytime we shift to a new major activity on site, we will be sending out activity notices. You can these go out to the abutters. I think you can also opt in if you want to receive those. We'll also be posting monthly construction updates to the website on the last Friday of each month. So the one for October is up there. Feel free to visit and take a look at what you can expect to see, or any impacts to public ways, and just the nature of the activities on site. Throughout construction, we'll be taking obviously a lot of photographs, and we also have a drone, which is pretty exciting. And we'll post some of that imagery as well to the website throughout construction. If you ever have any questions, you can email the WCMA-PM@williams.edu email. That'll go to myself, the rest of the Skanska team, Devin, basically the whole PM team. So we'll respond. If we don't know the answer to your question right away, we'll definitely find the answer, or reach out to the stakeholder that can best address your questions. Scott Henderson is the site contact. So, for any emergencies, if you see something, you need to make a call to someone right away. Scott's the person to call, and his number is there. And then we direct you to the project website as a good starting place for any questions you might have. There are a lot of different tabs for frequently asked questions, like I said, updates on construction, etc. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Abby Berkevile from Consigli.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. We're excited to give a construction update. I'm going to welcome up Irvin Props as well. He's our senior superintendent on site. He's the boots on the ground that's going to be working with the trades every day to get the job done. So I figured he'd be a very good resource for us tonight. as Stephen mentioned, we are starting on site this week. We've started to put in our erosion control measures around the project site, doing some general clearing of trees to be able to put in those measures, as well as put in the site construction fencing around the entire site, which will start next week. So generally, we're starting this week, we're doing enabling work, really gearing up towards being able to put our supportive excavation around the southwest or southeast corner of the building in order to facilitate foundation work starting middle of December. Through the winter, we'll be putting in all of the building foundations and gearing up towards mass timber install in the spring of 2025. Our work hours on site will be from 8 a.m. in the morning to 5 p.m. at night. We may have some weekend work, but we are really trying to avoid that. And with that, I will turn it over to Irvin to go through our logistics plan and give an update on what we're doing on site for the next couple of months.
So some of the key things that we want to note for the logistics of this site, we are currently, our main office is located in the old Northside Hotel. That hotel will remain for the duration of this site. We'll be there in duration. That is also one of our starting parking lot areas. That's some of the key. We don't want to impact the Rotary and or the public. So those are some of the key things with our logistics that we thought about early on. With that, we also have a parking lot where we enter the site through gate A and we'll exit the site through gate B. So we have scenarios where we're looking at how we can manage traffic on site and work through that. There's going to be some situations where sections may get blocked or trucks where we have to move and do a different path. We do have a guard shack there on the corner of gate A. So we have a person that's going to staff there so we can limit the impact and trucks being in the Rotary, and we're going to get them on site. All contractors and working with our trade partners, they all know that the project does not open until 8 o'clock. We've talked about staging in other areas. That's also part of why we have the parking lot for 45, 46 spaces at the motel. So we're thinking about that. And then through the first year, we'll only impact traffic-wise with those 2 parking spaces. As we grow and the project area gets reduced and area to our project actually gets strength, we'll actually work together with our town partners and come up with other plans with parking. Some of the other key things, like I said, we started clearing of invasive products on site, setting up to create the site utility fence so we have our secured area within the construction zone, which is identified in red and also in green. In the green areas, we do have areas that we're going to have temporary fencing where we can actually get into other areas as we move forward with managing 3 different layers: the construction site, the maintenance area, and then the buffer area. So we have thought about how we're going to access those areas from our site side, not impact the abutters. The other thing that we will do is we have controls for erosion control. Once a week we have inspections. We work with our landscape architect, our civil engineers. We have other partners that do inspections besides us. We have our trade partner, our excavator that does inspections, and then we have design team that does inspections. We'll continue to walk through the site, and as we go through construction, to help manage erosion controls as well as construction activities and manage with our partners. And Beka, thank you for walking with us last week and going through the trees and actually working through those conditions that we are going to have challenges with and manage the condition that we have to go through with construction to make it a successful project. We'll go through the next slide. So thinking about the public and the entrances, we know there's a lot of joggers, a lot of people that walk, they go through town. We're constantly looking at how do we set back, how do we get line of sight for the trucks, as well as being able to see the public that's coming to those areas. This will be, once we have the fencing in place, we'll have all the signage put up in place, we'll do additional crosswalk striping, so we can actually create a situation where it's clean, it's thoughtful, and we want to manage the condition that we're trying to be respectful of the neighborhood and be a successful project with having a clean construction activity. This is the other side on the exit side. So we do have other controls, and we actually have increasing controls that with traffic matting and other things to help manage dust and also tracking onto the site area. We have equipment on site to sweep and clean up with dust measures. And again, we also have controls there to help manage the public. Anything else I missed there? Want to add anything?
No, you're good.
Okay. At the corner of the Rotary, when you're coming in from Vermont on the north side, we're setting back the fence. We've cleared that back. We'll leave the fence, the bench in place. We're trying to make sure that we have good view for the public when they come to that crosswalk, so that they're seeing the cars coming to that Rotary. They can see the public. There are people trying to cross. We know that's a heavy area of use, and we're being mindful to make sure that we do the right thing there.
Thank you, Irvin. Well, we're nearing the end. Speaking of next steps, I can say that we spoke a little faster than I thought we would, and I think that shows how excited we are to share this information with you and get this project started. So, like this presentation, we hope to hold community forums on other topics that are important to Williams and the Williamstown community. And we will hold one again in the spring. We are thinking about holding a sustainability-focused presentation, but if there are important topics that come to mind anybody wants to learn more about, please let me know, and we can develop a future community forum focused around that. We will continue meeting with abutters on an as-needed basis. Our abutting neighbors are an important stakeholder group to the project, and we're in regular contact, and as the construction milestones change, we'll be meeting with neighbors to describe those changes. As Stephen said, the project is presenting at the Conservation Commission on October 24th, and this is an additional step in order to ensure that all of our planting plans, especially that northwest zone that's within the 200-foot riparian buffer, all of the planting is done according to all applicable regulations. The QR code here, as well as printed cards in the lobby, are encouraging you to provide us feedback and comments and additional questions. And the form will also allow you to opt in to project communications and also to WCMA programming and exhibition communications. Here again, you see our group project management email for more questions, and Scott Henderson's number, and our project-specific website that we will keep very active. And we'll open it for questions now. We will pass around the microphone so that everyone can hear the question, and so also that we can pick up your question on the filming that we're filming tonight. We will be producing this video for WCMA to share on their YouTube. And I want to hear from as many questions as possible, so I ask that we ask one question at a time and not 2 or 3 part questions. That would be helpful for us to hear from as many people as possible in the time that we have remaining. I do have a couple of advanced questions that came up. We were asked about an anticipated ribbon cutting. Though we are starting construction on the site now, we are not going to be holding a formal ribbon cutting ceremony. We did address a question about the motel and the college's purchase of the motel that was asked. We were also asked about Town Hall, if our project is impacting Town Hall in any way, and it is not. We're working really closely with Town Hall throughout the project as a neighbor, but the college has no plans to, and the project has no plans to make any changes at Town Hall. We were also asked about planting shrubbery on top of the retaining wall. There's a retaining wall on the north entry that supports the drive into the museum's parking lot. And on top of that retaining wall, it's part of the stormwater management that Beka described. So while we might evaluate planting shrubbery, we have to do so in a very measured and studied way. So we hear the question and the input, but there are some reasons why it might not be wise for us to plant shrubbery in that area. So with that, Braden will pass around the microphone, and again, please give us time to pass the mic to you. I hope that green light turned on. So.
Testing.
Thank you.
What issues have you found so far, a la Indian artifacts or things like that, on the site?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question. We hired a cultural resource manager, which is a firm consisting of architects and, I'm sorry, not architects, archaeologists and anthropologists who have been studying the site for several months. They started their work with historical research and then recommended that they come to the site and do some testing of the soil and including X-ray radiation of the site. Initially, we were looking for conclusive location of the fort, and we were unable to find any conclusive material from the fort or any other artifacts. So we're, the cultural resource manager is currently completing their report for us, but so far there have been no findings.
How you doing? My name is Mike LaFleur. I'm the president of the Berkshire Building Trades. I was just curious if the college had implemented any diversity requirements for this project. I know there's thousands of skilled craftsmen in Berkshire County that are really excited about this project going up right in their backyard. You know, as well as you know, minorities and female trades workers, which are becoming a lot more prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I want to ask Consigli to answer that question. Yeah, thank you, Abby.
Sure. So our goal on the project site is for 7% of the workforce to be people of color and 5% to be women. It is definitely a challenging goal, especially with this location. However, we've proven pretty successful on previous projects, and we're looking forward to exceeding that goal.
So, what are the
Hello?
hello? So, what are the long-term plans for the north side, and is it integrated into the museum or the museum site?
The north side property will be the construction offices for the duration of the project, and I'm not aware of what the future plan is for that site yet. Does anyone else in the room want to have news? Oh, we've got.
I have a question. I have a question, and I apologize because I'm sure it's been announced, but you know, with the access for community buses as well as Peter Pan going, what's the plan for that? I never heard, and since we're public transport challenged around here, I think it's rather important.
Yeah, again, thank you for asking that question. The college, along with the bus providers, have evaluated multiple sites around the campus to temporarily relocate the bus services. And it's taken some time to find a suitable location for all of them, especially with an interchange with Peter Pan. We are currently studying the existing bus stop on 2 outside of the museum, outside of the current WCMA, as a temporary change. So currently the bus stop outside of the new museum site is going to be safe for use until we're able to make that relocation, which hopefully happens just within a matter of months. And there is a point at which our project relocates that drive into the museum property, so we will relocate the service before we do that work. And then it will be a temporary relocation. We will return the bus stop to the current location. It'll shift east slightly on that site, but it will return so that the museum, the new WCMA, can also take advantage of all of that transit. Okay, two more.
Bill Densmore, I live down the street, and I'm inspired by the comments of the Hildebrand woman about interrelating the site around art with the notion of plantings and the natural landscape. I'm curious if she has any sort of examples of similar integration, similar focus that way around the country or around the world, just because I'm curious whether this is going to be a unique and sort of groundbreaking approach.
Thanks, that's a nice question. We, I think, are interested in the opportunities for doing that, and so there is nowhere else that we're doing what we're doing here, so it will be unique. I think, for instance, we have a project down in New Orleans with the New Orleans Museum of Art, and we did do some pretty interesting ways, or we came up with some pretty new and exciting ways to integrate the ecology down there with different works of art, and work specifically with artists on commissions for that environment. But I think one of the things that's important about this project is that it's tuned very exactly to all the things that are most extraordinary about Williamstown, and so you can't really do that anywhere else. But I think the kind of framing of the question is one that we're trying to do in other places, which is how do you really think about that specifically? But what we're doing at Powder Mountain in Utah, because the scale there is radically different than the kind of thing we can do here. And so that's how I would respond.
Thank you. I live on Fort Hoosick Place, which abuts the museum site to the west. I've spoken with the other residents of Fort Hoosick Place, and we're all concerned that the plans for the new museum are not going to provide adequate screening between the museum and our homes. Now, the plans call for an 8-foot retaining wall, for a guardrail for lighting along the west side of the driveway leading to the parking area. The guardrails, the lighting, and the cars driving along the top of the retaining wall will be visible from Fort Hoosick Place unless some plantings are installed on the top of the retaining wall. Now, I understand that the retaining wall is part of the drainage system, but I think that it can be redesigned. It's not too late to redesign it to accommodate some dense shrubs along the top of the retaining wall, which would provide screening between the roadway and the homes on Fort Hoosick Place. I think enhancing the screening between the museum and our homes would be a generous gesture in sharing good neighborly relations. Thank you.
I'll build on that. Question about the reforestation areas. It strikes me that reforestation, both very ambitious, also ends up being a one-time achievable moment. If for some reason some of the plantings or blight or something causes the change to the reforestation areas, is there still the ability to be able to come back and to restore if necessary, or if the plant material fails, to be able to safeguard and still achieve the overall final design result that you're looking for?
Thank you both for your combined comments and questions. I think our hope very much is that you cannot see cars from your homes on Fort Busick when the project is fully realized. That said, there are two things I want to highlight. One, we are doing something that I've only been able to do once before on a project, which is we're planting first. So we are planting in that area this spring before almost anything else happens. And that is very much in the service of really trying to have good relationships with all of you. Because I think the qualities of nature that are why people want to live in Williamstown are really important to all of us. So just saying that that is the goal. That said, plants are a little bit like children, and they're sometimes unruly, and they don't do always exactly what you might expect. So we're trying to do everything we can to put as many plants that are going to be happy and healthy and growing as fast as possible there, as soon as possible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is please do be patient, because they do need some time to grow. In response to the second question, which is what is the capacity to grow shrubs or other material that might provide additional screening at the top by the drive, we have tried quite hard to integrate planting areas in that condition and also keep it a very safe condition. And so it is something that we are actively studying. We will have meadow grasses, which will be tall, and we are seeking to have planting pockets not just for shrubs, but also for trees. It is hard. I'm just telling you, I mean, I've been working on it for 2 years now to try and make it really work without becoming an unsafe condition. And it is a challenging condition. So that's sort of all I guess I can say. But we have additionally quite a bit of planting between the museum itself and the drive. So we've tried as much as possible to bias screening toward the neighbors for your benefit.
I want to also answer some of the question about how we will be maintaining the landscape. One benefit of planting early is that we have consigli mobilized to help us keep eyes on it and to help us maintain and establish the early planting throughout the construction project. And we are also evaluating how to establish a longer-term maintenance contract with a firm that will help support Williams grounds staff, so that as this landscape is taking more care and more time for establishment, that we're finding ways to support our existing staff in that effort.
With so many, with multiple areas of gardens and landscaping on the site itself, as opposed to the borders, that's going to require a lot of maintenance at various times of the year. Is facilities involved in all of these, the thinking and the budgeting of this project? I don't assume that the museum is going to have its own facility staff. Maybe it is.
In a perfect world, it will, but we're still some ways away in planning for the future operations. I wish Facility Persicki could be here tonight. She has been an integral part of the project and working very closely with Beka. Facility is the Felicity. Excuse me. Felicity had a migraine today and wasn't able to be here tonight, but she's been a very important part. Do you have anything to say about that partnership?
Yeah, because we have had the chance to work with the college for, I guess, 7 years now, it's clear that, you know, with the scale of this landscape, if we did not develop our plans for this project hand in hand, like literally kind of trying to hold hands with Felicity and her team, it would not be maintainable. And so one of the reasons we went and did the assessment of all the plants that are flourishing is so that as much as possible, we can use those plants so they require as little additional labor as is possible. That said, we know there's going to need to be weekly care, and in some places almost even we've talked about having a daily walkthrough, hoping it's, you know, just a very little number of minutes, but just keeping eyes on what's growing and what's happening. And so I think we're hoping that this is a really treasured landscape and environment on the campus and in town, and everyone is behind that goal.
Not seeing any other hands up. Do we have any last questions? Okay. All right. I'll just ask again, please leave a comment and access our website or our email if you think of questions later, and please stay tuned for future forums. Thank you very much.